Allergies are not important to the Home Depot. I do not want to cast any slander towards the Home Depot. The title should probably read this: Bob doesn't care about your allergies. This happened about 5 years ago, and I haven't been to the Home Depot in question in a long time. Names have been changed for privacy. In high school, I was working at the local Home Depot as a head cashier. I kept track of all the active registers and made sure things ran smoothly. I held this position for quite some time, 1 to 2 years, and enjoyed it pretty well. Customers were nice, and my co-workers were mostly craftsmen and gardeners, all with interesting stories to share. Before we go further, let me explain something. I am allergic to nearly every form of pollen. I mean every form. I take allergy medication, but even then, if I am in close proximity to flowers for too long, 30 minutes, I will begin to break out in hives and throw up most of the time. So, after about 3 months working in the winter, the spring season was upon us, the worst season for my allergies. One day, about 3 of our garden section cashiers called off sick. They are pretty reliable people, so I had no problem finding people to cover for them. As I come to my manager to inform them of the position changes, my manager looks at me and says, "You can handle the garden section on your own, can't you?" I inform my manager that I could cover it for at most 15 minutes before my allergies flare up and I'll have to leave. He states, "We don't have any documents on file that state you are not fit to work in the garden section, so unless you come to me with a doctor's note stating your allergies, I couldn't give less of a duck." I don't know who shit in his Cheerios that morning, but I complied, saying, "I want to be sure of what you are asking. You want me to work in a section which is hazardous to my health instead of placing equally capable employees in that section." Did I stutter? He said, "Okay, sure." I said, "I make my way down to the garden section, and immediately my eyes are stinging. I decide that I am going to stick it out for my boss's sake, no matter how shitty my service becomes." The first 10 minutes are pretty uneventful, but then a customer asks me about the rash on my arms. The Home Depot does not care about allergies, I say, as I do not have official paperwork. This customer looks extremely concerned, asking for my manager's name. At this point, I was feeling nausea hit me. I throw up in the trash can at the register, turn back to smile, as well as I could, and say I work under Bob. The customer reassures me that I will be okay, and tells me I should head home. Turns out, this guy, Nick, was a higher up at the Home Depot's regional management and was my boss's boss. So, naturally, I comply with the chain of command and head to the locker room to pack up. As I am packing, Bob comes in, fuming and cursing, telling me I have no right to leave yet and that my shift is not over for another 5 hours. I simply say Nick told me to go home. Bob's face gets redder as he threatens to fire me, saying I was lying, and tells me to go back out. I comply, knowing that I will see Nick on my way out. I pass Nick, still in the orange apron, and he asks me where I am going. I say that Bob told me to go back to work. Nick's expression goes from concerned to furious, as he takes my apron from me and tells me I'll be paid for the full shift and to go home. I come into work the next day to see that Bob's nameplate has been removed from the office. I ask our HR rep what happened, and apparently, after I had left, Nick stormed Bob's office and proceeded to perform an audit on all of his past employee complaints. This guy had been throwing out complaints for the past 5 years. Needless to say, there was an opening for the store management position, and I was given a week's vacation for my troubles. My satisfaction was huge. Edit. I realize now that the title may look like I am putting down Home Depot. That wasn't my intent, I just wanted to recount my experience.
Now to the comments. This guy had been throwing out complaints for the past 5 years. Winces, ouch. Somebody definitely deserved the sack. Depending on how his contract was written, he could easily be worse than merely fired. That kind of malicious incompetence could leave the parent company open to some massive lawsuits. Hopefully that was the end of his career as a manager.
What does he mean by employee complaints?
They typically range from interpersonal conflicts, discrimination complaints, harassment complaints, etc., to payroll issues, scheduling, improper checks, altered time clocks, etc., to safety issues, unsafe work conditions, damaged equipment, etc. If this guy was throwing them out instead of properly addressing them, there's all kinds of fallout that could land on the heads of the people above this guy. Everything from OSHA violations to harassment lawsuits to financial audits. And more that I'm likely not thinking of. Ignorance of a situation isn't a good defense when it's your job to know after all. And when a higher up finds out that someone below them was deliberately making sure they were ignorant, all hell tends to break loose on that poor fool. Yup, you don't mess around with people health. What Nick did was spot on.
Seriously. Would you rather accommodate someone who claims they have a health condition or risk a lawsuit, and potentially harm someone, after refusing to? It seems like a simple answer to me, but apparently there are idiot bosses out there who just don't get it.
Must. Throw. Wait. Around. Can't. Stop. Himself. TBH, you got lucky that your second-degree boss happened to show up in your line when he did. How well would it have gone over to require Bob's demand in writing before entering the Flower Dome?
Second-degree boss, I like the term grand boss, and the next level up is great grand boss.
My favorites as well. Having worked in the big orange box for nearly half a decade myself, across 8 different stores, I can confirm that this is sadly not an isolated incident. While it is not the way most managers do things, it is sadly far too common.
Reading this at work in a big orange box right now.
Reading this at work at your competitor right now. Have you heard of sublingual, slit, for allergies? I moved from the Northwest to the Midwest, found out I'm allergic to pretty much everything out there after getting tested for allergies. I could take allergy medicine, or my doctor said I could try allergy treatments where I either get a weekly shot or take daily drops under my tongue. I opted for the drops since it's more convenient for me. They make a custom mixture of my allergens so I slowly build up an immunity. I'm about 6 months in, it seems to be making a significant difference. Might be something to consider so you don't have to feel miserable a good chunk of the year. If you can start soon, you may have built up a bit of an immunity by the time allergy season arrives. Sucks you had to deal with that shitty boss. Glad it had a happy ending for you. Did I stutter? Punchable boss.
Stanley?
I feel like I missed a thing here. How can you audit employee complaints if Bone has been throwing them out?
OP replied. Something to do with HR having a notification of a complaint with no resolution from Bob's desk.
Oh yeah. This budding story bloomed into quite a read, but always get stuff in writing like that. Never apologize.
His boss's boss was the bee's knees, coming down hard with flower power.
Home Depot really does not care about its employees' physical health. I worked there in the flooring department for over a year from when I was 18 to 19. I broke my back and my neck when I was 16, so I had some trouble moving the large cases of tile. I brought in a doctor's note stating my injury and that I could not lift anything over 50 pounds, but my managers did not care. They continuously gave me those tasks because I was the young one and I couldn't possibly have a back as bad as them. They then denied my department change request to 3 different departments even though I was trained and covered in those departments for lunches. In another event, I had accidentally rolled over my right ankle with the electric ladder machine after slipping on some dust. I was swollen like a balloon and bleeding, and I was told to finish my shift and stop complaining. I wasn't even given a break to stop the bleeding. Eventually I left the company and went to work a desk job because of how brutal it was. Duck Home Depot.
Yikes. Would have been great to have a Nick show up as you are going about your shift and leaving a trail of blood after yourself. What happened to you? You are bleeding. Oh, I know, sir. I'm not allowed to take a min to stop the bleeding. How can I help you with your shopping today?